Hello, welcome back. Some very interesting material during that network session, and I hope you're fully refreshed for the second half of this afternoon's conference. So we're going to get into a little bit more detail now, and in particular, we're going to be focusing on a range of innovations focused on reducing embodied carbon. We're going to be talking about concrete, steel, aggregates, and timber. And initially, we're going to be focusing on the concrete challenge. And this is a pre-recorded presentation from Veronika Elf-Markova, who is the EcoPact project manager for London Concrete. And this session has been sponsored by Aggregate Industries. So I'm going to pass you over to the ether to this presentation, and I'll come back for a Q&A a little bit later. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for coming to Decarbonising Construction Conference. My name is Veronika Elf-Markova. I'm EcoPact Product Manager at London Concrete. And basically, I am looking after the sustainable solutions, low carbon concrete within London Concrete and Aggregate Industries. As we all know, we have a legal obligation towards reaching net zero and zero carbon emissions by 2050, and the same applies to London Concrete. From bigger picture, Aggregate Industries, we are a member of Aggregate Industries, and from the global perspective, we are a member of Holcim. Holcim is the biggest cement producer globally, and they have set, or we have set, quite challenging targets towards reaching net zero by 2030, and that's as well what is in our sustainability strategy. And here in the UK, we are aiming towards the year 2030 to really reduce our emission as much as we possibly can. Having said that, currently the industry doesn't really have any standardized method how to declare carbon values, carbon emissions, and hopefully we are going to get there soon. So we have chosen to go the direction of science-driven approach, and we are part of the Science Based Target Initiative as a Holcim, and all our carbon data, we are as well working with Carbon Trust to develop. We have developed a tool how we are declaring our values. So it's not just only for us value there, but actually it has the third-party verification, and we are not only looking for a number itself, but from the bigger picture, we are looking into sourcing, transport, how we are actually transporting all our materials to different locations, and if we need to bring it from outside of the UK, is that taken into account? We are as well quite keen on exploring how we can transport by rails, if we need to use roads, how we can improve that side of it. At the same time, the processing is as well a key thing for us. So really just in a bigger picture, I wanted to summarize that if we are looking into carbon, that as a company, as a business, we are looking into all life cycle assessment stages we can participate in. So that means for us A1 to A4, which I believe that's the right approach, and it's not only just one number. If we can't split it, how we can show that we are transparent about it. So I get the question a lot from clients, from not only from clients, but as well internally and externally during discussions, where is most of the carbon coming from in ready-mix concrete? And sometimes I'm surprised because concrete, I suppose, is many times overlooked as a CO2 emitter. And it is, and the main emitter we are using Portland cement in it, and that's causing and releasing the most of the CO2 globally, really. And we are using that in ready-mix concrete. So if you see the graph, there's a nice demonstration how big is the percentage which is coming only from Portland cement from total embodied carbon for ready-mix concrete, 1 cubic meter of concrete. This is typical C3240 mix. Because most of the time people are asking the question, so what about transport? What are you doing about it? And if you see here, the transport and the processing, which is there, is just a small fraction of what we need to do in order to decarbonize ready-mix sector. We have to focus on materials and how we are using our materials. As I mentioned many times, concrete is overlooked and as well seen as a not innovative, not progressing. Ready-mix suppliers are seen that they are not doing enough in order to decarbonize. I agree to a certain extent, but at the same time, there are already initiatives, strategies in place, how the reaching net zero can be accelerated, how the transition towards net zero can be done much quicker than what we are doing at the moment. And I would start probably firstly just by getting rid of straight Portland cement mixes in a project. So that's what we are trying to do with our clients and with our projects, where if we see someone, we are trying to offer different solution where we can reduce and optimize the carbon concrete mix and then consequently reduce carbon. So I believe there are two different ways in a ready-mix sector how we can focus, and as well we are doing that. So there is this bit which is still not innovative. It is there, it's been there for a long time. And this is the group of concrete mixes where you are using high replacement levels with supplementary materials. If it is GGBS, fly ash, limestone, microsilica, whatever it is, which is currently complying with codes, we are using that, and we can reduce carbon by optimizing the concrete mix at this stage, because you can have replacement levels up to 80% and still have quite low carbon concrete mix. So that's one direction. On the other hand, there is the second direction where you are using new technologies, such as alkali activated concrete, where you don't have any Portland cement in a mix, and you are using alkali activators to reach the same properties and behavior as your Portland cement base concrete. So that's the second one, although this one comes with challenges because it currently doesn't comply with standards. The construction industry, from my view, is quite slow to adopting new technologies. It takes quite a long time to go through process reviewing, testing, and getting everything updated, which is a bit shame because the technologies are there which can be used probably from the technical readiness. It's still not there, but we are still developing. We can do that on a background. And if there is more push from government, from industry, from clients, it can be adopted much quicker. That's just my personal view, possibly. But we have the technologies there which can be used. But on the other hand, having said that, so I have a graph here where we have different mixes where you are using different GGBS replacement levels. And that's mainly for us London Concrete, we are using GGBS or fly ash in our mixes in order to have lower carbon concrete mixes. And if you can see the difference between typical SEM-free beaming, so where you have 66% GGBS and above, the embodied carbon is already significantly lower if you compare it with Portland cement base mix or even 40% GGBS replacement level. But then if you are comparing it, for example, with the alkali activated solution, which is the top row, where you have 95% of GGBS, we are almost at the same level of embodied carbon. So I think that brings few questions, really. First of all, there is a quite resentment within the sector to use high GGBS mixes because of the supply chain issues or availability, which is questioned. At the moment, I would say there is enough of GGBS globally, but with time there is going to be shortage, and rarely we will need to look into different supplementary materials which can be used in order to decarbonize. So there's resentment towards these mixes which comply with standards and still use Portland cement as an activator, essentially. And there is a demand on alkali activated concrete where you don't have enough cement. But the embodied carbon is still there, more or less the same as if you have compliant concrete. So usually my question towards then the client or towards the project is, do we want a low carbon or no cement? Because these are two different questions. And I think we need to think about it. Because if we are replacing cement, which has high embodied carbon, but the cement industry is decarbonizing, is it direction for the industry to replace that with alkali activators, which have really high embodied carbon? I think that's the question to be asked and answered, probably. Is it a silver bullet to how to decarbonize the ready-mix sector? I don't think so. Is it going to have a place in ready-mix sector? Possibly, yes. These concrete mixes can be used, can be, even at the moment, we can use them for non-structural concrete. So if we can, if this is the option, the lowest option, lowest carbon option, we should encourage that. But at the same time, we really need to think about from the bigger picture. If we are not replacing something, it, my manager always has as an example. If we are not replacing potato with pasta, both of them are carbs. So we really need to think about it and collaborate, and not only within the sector, but with academia, across the chain, just to make sure that we are doing the right thing. I just wanted to give you an example, talking about the alkali activated concrete. We've done first structural concrete in this technology here in the UK. We've done it for COP26, just to demonstrate that it is possible that these technologies have future, and there still need to be a lot of work done on a background. This technology is tested against PAS 8020. It's not the only technology in the market, and yeah, it is a good future ahead with that if we can make it work, or possibly as well if we can focus not only on GGBS and fly ash, which is currently activated, but if we can use something different, if we can look into different waste products, probably from different sectors, if that can be used for this technology and applied in ready-mix sector, in industry sector. But as well, just to demonstrate that we can accelerate and we can use something at the moment, our mixes or our concrete solutions, which are used at the moment, which high blend levels, and they are still going to perform against the standard, and they are not going to affect your program. Because sometimes all these high blend mixes, the feedback which we are getting is, but it's going to affect our program, which affecting the program negatively means more carbon, and as well it has an economic impact. So there are solutions in the market, products which we can use, even if the high blend levels are there, and they don't need to affect your program, because we have there's, for example, one of our products that we can use high blend levels and still perform as low GGBS replacements. So I believe really the engagement for project and to be aware of these products needs to happen at the beginning. So because that never happened in the past, that ready-mix supplier was engaging, for example, with specifier, with architect engineers. And I am confident to say that the engineering practices or architects, they don't really know what can be offered by ready-mix suppliers. Not even many times contractors we are dealing on daily basis, they don't know. So the engagement and the collaboration, I think it's key in order to decarbonize and do the change to accelerate actually to reach net zero by 2050. Because if we don't do it now, I don't think we will be able to reach and reduce the emissions in the sector. And having said that as well, I mentioned at the beginning that there is no standardized method for declaring carbon values, which I think it's lacking, not coming from this country, but knowing as well that across the globe there are already countries where it's a must to have a standardized method. So I believe that this needs to be a next step to really for us to have the standardized methods in order for us to see where we stand with concrete. From our end, we have go down the route of environmental product declarations. It's not at the moment, but we have third-party verification at the moment with Carbon Trust. But we are going to through the path of EPDs and having them available for mixes, because that's going to give us transparency and clarity about where we stand with projects, and we will be able to help reduce scope 3 emissions for our clients and monitor that through the years to see how we are progressing and if we are not going backwards. As well, just to engage from the beginning with our clients, we are talking to engineers, architects, we are trying to educate, we are trying to show them what we can do at the moment, because I think it's a bit of shame that ready-mix suppliers don't have kind of the right, well, they have the right, but it's not the direction which is taken to say what we can offer for how we can help with the specification. Because the specification currently in the codes are done, they are pretty defining, they're telling you what needs to be in the concrete mix. But sometimes for us, it's like, well, we would be able to reduce, for example, amount of binder and still comply with the requirements. But it's currently not the option in the industry. It's not approach which has been adopted yet. And the last bit is really to provide baselines, what needs to be done really from our perspective, from my perspective, to provide client the reassurance that we know where we stand with carbon, what we can provide, and what is realistic. Recently, there was a launch of the low carbon roadmap by ICE, where they were demonstrating the embodied carbon certificates, which I think it's a great idea to establish really benchmarking what can possibly be done and what we can provide. So that's a good starting point, and I hope we will see that more often within the sector. How I would like to conclude this is that in order for us to decarbonize the concrete sector and as well to support all the new technologies which are coming out, the greater collaboration needs to take place, not only across the supply chain, but as well across competition. And I know every single business, it's business at first place, but if we don't share, if we don't collaborate, the ideas are not going to be there, and it's going to slow down what we can do actually at the moment. And as well how we can apply the bigger idea about circularity and sustainability for ready-mix and cement sector, because I believe we are taking bits and bobs from the strategies, and everyone is doing their own thing. But the basics, really how we can together implement all of this and how this can be translated and help the companies to develop further, that's still missing. Thank you very much for your attention at the moment. I'm here to answer any questions if there are, and thank you.
Veronica, that was a really great presentation. I think there's so much insight there in terms of what the concrete industry is doing, what contributions it can make, and also I thought the range of options that are made available to your clients. And firstly, before I ask any questions, there is the Q&A box is open. We've got a couple in at the moment, but I'll just lead in with one that I'm particularly intrigued about because it's very much in line with quite a lot of the stuff we do with the Construction Leadership Council, Construction Playbook, and such like. Is I'm interested in all of those variations, so some levers you can pull. Um, what enables you to collaborate effectively with your contractor clients? Do you need to get involved much earlier in the project during the early stages of design, or is conventional procurement, does that enable you to have full impact?
Thank you, Simon. Well, at the moment, we are not able to be involved at early stages, which I think is a shame. That as a concrete supplier, ready-mix supplier, we can really give an advice and suggestions what can be used in a project. So the strategy, what we are having now, and how we are trying to really reach more clients and have an impact on how to reduce carbon and all the emissions is really to work with our and collaborate with our clients, and as well to be involved at early stages of the when the decision is made.
Mm,
Because I believe I know all these engineers and structural engineers, civil engineers, architects, all of us, we follow codes. But at the same time, if we can give an advice on what can be used, that would be helpful. And I believe it would help to accelerate the journey towards net zero.
mm, yeah, because I think that gives a really practical example of when say for example the government talks about involving the entire supply chain earlier in the decision making process, why organizations such as yours, aggregate industry, should be involved. Got a question from Daniel Dittrey, and it sounds like he's quite impressed by EcoPact Max because he's interested in whether that is suitable for most applications, and in particular whether there are any implications around an extended curing time.
So thank you, Daniel. EcoPact Max is alkali activated concrete. So currently, at the moment, it's not within standards and codes. Uh, at the moment, it can be used only as a temporary for temporary works. I wouldn't say that it's suitable for most of the applications. Probably in the future, when there is higher TRL level for these type of products, then yes, and as well when there are no challenges in regards to standards. But at the same time, um, I mentioned earlier the high GGBS mixes and all that. So my question as well towards the alkali activated solution is that the future of alkali activated solution and geopolymer, or shall we be looking into something else? Currently, in regards to the longer curing time, no, it doesn't require longer curing time. The EcoPack Max solution is performing as our standard concretes which we have.
Okay. Now, I've got a couple of questions from the same audience member, Kaz Kundi, he's certainly thinking along, or he or she is thinking along the lines that I've been thinking about, because the first question is about concerns around the availability of GBBS and whether the industry should be shifting to alternatives, and the alternative mentioned is calcinated clay. So firstly, Veronica, are we in danger of running out of GBBS? And if yes or no, should we be looking at these alternatives?
So at the moment, globally, there is enough of GGBS. However, there are issues with supply chain. So yes, we can be facing GGBS shortages. From a longer perspective, well, I would start from the short and midterm. I would say that at the moment, we don't have much an option how to accelerate the journey towards net zero and what materials can we use. But Having said that, I think the industry needs to be looking into different materials. Calcined clay is one option, but at the same time, I believe that the construction industry, seen as a not innovative and closed-minded, I would say as well, we should be engaging with different industries and really trying to find out if we have different options available, what we can use as a supplementary material in future ready-mix concrete.
Hmm. Now, Kaz and also Phil Arrowsmith are sort of quite interested in that issue around the risk averse nature of the industry. Kaz, from the perspective of the sort of low carbon route map that the ICE developed, and I think Phil from more just from a specific aspect of the mindsets of clients and focus on tried and tested methods. So, given that quite a lot of the innovation is actually in products that aren't compliant with British standards, what can be done to encourage the adoption of those? Is it a matter of getting the standards to be updated, or are the things that clients can do now?
Um, that's a good question, and I don't think there is a direct answer to that. I believe that, for example, ready-mix suppliers, we should be given um, we should be given the opportunity to give suggestions to clients what can work because we have the experience, we've done the work, we are constantly testing, producing the material on daily basis all the time. So perhaps as well, that's one direction. And at the same time, standards have been there for a long time. The changes are taking even longer, and
Mm,
adoption of new materials is as well long. So maybe as well the other angle is why we don't have a standard based on performance. If we can
okay.
collect all the data, but again, it's a collaboration, I think, across the supply chain, across all the competitors, all ready-mix suppliers, engineers, architects, and just really to see what can be done, just
Hmm.
to test it. As there is, yeah, a question about testing, and yeah, well,
Yeah.
it's a long process.
Okay. And I that actually really interestingly raises this issue of standards could potentially be quite a constraint on the trajectory of the shift to net zero, and given the kind of resources that are available to BSI, that could slow things down. We've got one final question, and it's a really hard one, but Peter Kelly is asking, should we do more to reuse existing concrete rather than creating less carbon intensive concrete? In some ways that makes sense in terms of reusing existing structures. Is there anything you can do in any other aspects of existing concrete?
Well, yeah, reusing concrete, again, it goes down to testing because I don't think there has been enough work done in order to evaluate the material when we reuse it. But it's one of the directions because it goes together with the sustainability aspect and circular economy, really. But again, collecting data, testing, and then it goes as well with structural designs and engineers, really how we can design and optimize new buildings as well, how we can reuse. So it's again collaborative approach of the industry needs to happen at first place.
Excellent. Well, firstly to the audience, thank you for a great set of questions, and I hope you're just limbering up for our discussion session that which we're just about to start. So Veronica and I are going to disappear and magically reappear in a larger room. So we'll see you in a few moments.